welcome to Ivy Tech's annual Cook Center for Entrepreneurship Luncheon. I am Aaron Coyne, Chancellor here at Ivy Tech Bloomington, and unfortunately, I'm your MC today. Steve Bryant was pulled away on a family issue. He would love to be standing right here talking with all of you. Steve has that gift, and he's relinquished it to me today, so I will keep the trains on track and the trains running on time. So thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. We've got a great discussion planned for today. I'd like to welcome Mark Miles from Penske Entertainment Corporation for being here today and sharing his insights with us. Thanks, Mark. And please thank Mr. Penske. I'd also like to welcome Steve Ferguson, who will be moderating today's discussion, as well as his wife, Connie, who is also chairperson of the Ivy Tech Bloomington Campus Board of Trustees. They are incredible Ivy Tech supporters, as indicated by the name on our building. So thank you to both of you. I'd also like to welcome all of our Campus Board of Trustees here today. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all you do for our students and for our community all year round. And to our students who are here today, thank you for being here. Additionally, I'd like to give a special welcome to Jefferson Shreve, who's here today with us in Shreve Hall. And Diane Powell, representing Senator Young. And Schuler Hicks, representing Senator Braun. And of course, today's event would not be possible without the generous support of our table sponsors, as well as our signature sponsors, German American Bank, Stitville, and the Cook Group. Thank you so much for your support. I'd also like to thank those who worked tirelessly to put this event on. Steve Bryant, of course, who couldn't be here. Troy Phelps, Tina Phelps, not related. Tina Zmick, Amanda Billings, Heidi Schultz, Michelle Apple, Haley Cranful, Sarah Staub, and especially to Emma Ferguson and Joyce Poling, who do much of the heavy lifting. And my last thank you goes out to One World, who does a lot of our catering throughout the year, and are tremendous partners of ours and support our students through internships and various other activities. So thank you to One World. Now in its 14th year, the Cook Center was founded to honor one of the region's most successful entrepreneurs, Bill Cook. The Cook Center embodies Mr. Cook's philosophy of ready, fire, aim. And now I've been working with the Cook Center now for about 9 months, and Steve definitely embodies ready, fire. They give our students and local residents the skills and resources needed to start businesses. So just an example of where your dollars are going when you sponsor our events. We do host the region's Small Business Development Center. We provide business consultation, pitch competitions, support our academic programs such as entrepreneurship and business administration. And over the last decade, the Cook Center for Entrepreneurship has helped nearly 2,500 clients obtain almost $86 million in capital infusion and start over 130 businesses. That is what we do. Oftentimes you think of Ivy Tech as just student-centric. We have two missions. One is to support our students and ensure student success. The second is to help fuel our regional economy. And the Cook Center embodies that, and we're really proud of the work they do. Every week, I hear about how Ivy Tech changes people's lives. So I'd like to highlight our entrepreneurship students sitting in the back. Go back there. I've had the opportunity to get to know them this semester and and work with them, give them feedback on pitches and things like that. And one of them in particular, I want to say hi to Norma back there, just turned 90 years old. But when I think about how INDYCAR changes people's lives, you've got 90-year-old Norma back there restarting a business, developing her entrepreneurial skills, lifelong learner. And we also have Amber McCarty back there. Amber's 30-year-old mom. Amber went to college, didn't work out, left for a while, left town for a while, and then came back and found INDYCAR. And she started her entrepreneurship journey, in part thanks to the Ferguson Family Scholarship. She's able to fund her academic career in her entrepreneurship, and now is hoping to launch her business and become a successful business owner herself. That's the power of support that you give to INDYCAR, changing lives, making a difference for people. So thank you very much. Thanks, Amber. Good luck. So to keep things moving, you don't want to hear from me all morning, all afternoon. I would like at this time to welcome Mark and Steve up to the stage. And as they make their way up, I'll say a little bit about them. Mark is President and Chief Executive Officer of Penske Entertainment Corporation, comprised of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, INDYCAR, and IMS Productions. Penske Entertainment Corp is a subsidiary of Penske Corporation, a global transportation, automotive, and motorsports leader employing more than 71,000 people worldwide. And a man who needs little introduction on this stage, Steve Ferguson, Chairman of the Board of Cook Group and President of French Lake Resort. By the way, we were just chatting, and Steve told me he doesn't get anything for free down at French Lake, but he does get an employee discount. He just bought a new sweatshirt this weekend. So. And I won't say what you said about the prices. Steve's been actively involved in redevelopment, historic preservation, including the rebirth of downtown Wilmington, and led the renovation of historic French Lake. He's also played a key role in the growth of Cook Medical, a global leader in the medical devices industry and one of our leaders in our one more nugget about Steve. I played a lot of pickup basketball against Steve growing up at the line. And he would back us down. He's incredibly competitive. And really, I think that highlights the entrepreneurial spirit and mindset we're going to talk about here. Whether I think I was 11, 12 years old, or whether when I came back from college and I was playing pickup ball at the Y, he was tenacious and getting after it. And it's that in spirit, it's what embodies the entrepreneurial mindset. And it's what we are imparting in our students and what we're trying to impart in part with the discussion we're having today. So, Steve, thank you very much. And with that, I will turn it over to you and Mark.
Everybody hear me? Everybody? Well, at least you weren't in, so I'm glad. Today, stands for operation for me in technology. I need to have a good woman to come take care of it, make sure.
Now you're in trouble.
How do you take care of all of my technology? This is a rare opportunity, I think, for Wilmington and for everybody here to have somebody like Mark Miles come join us. His career is unbelievable. And I hope that during the course of these questions, that we'll have a chance to really have a feel for what he's accomplished and what he's done. I was thinking about this today, and one of the things that struck me, when you think about Bill Cook, not only starting medical device companies and other companies, but also winning a national international competition with drum corps, and also winning a championship in the English League of basketball and restoration, and the broad breadth of his vision and insight and how to accomplish it. And I think as we go through, I was struck with the fact that the variety of things that Mark is engaged in and made him successful. So I think I was sort of comparing the two, and it really struck me, the comparison with all the things that you've done. Today I'd like to, you've got a very career of leadership and vision, and you faced a lot of challenges since 1980 to 2030. The world has changed around you. I'd like to talk some with, as we approach these things, about your entrepreneurial mindset in each of these ventures. And you may not think of them as business, but each of these things that he's engaged in are really a startup, organizing people, providing leadership, and accomplishing a goal very successfully. And I think it's I think you provided some good insight into that in your concepts and how you work on it. So I'd like to start. Obviously, you went North Central High School in Indianapolis, Wabash College, for all Wabash friends here, and then came out and started in what struck me as a really major event, which was being the chair of campaign senatorial against an incumbent that you don't want to vote for. So sort of take us through how do you approach that and your mindset on that first adventure out of college. I mean, this normally is people who have been there, have a lot of experience, and who are starting and running a major campaign.
Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll get to the question, but let me just first say it's a real pleasure to be here. You said, how they coach you into being here. I said, well, Steve Ferguson called. Pretty short call. So to be with you, Steve, and with Connie, and so many friends here, I hadn't seen the further expansion of the place here at Ivy Tech. To be in Jefferson's house here is an honor, and I'm really just glad to be here. I'm beyond humbled, I'm humiliated with the idea that you would mention Bill Cook and Mike Miles in the same breath. I think that's preposterous, but I appreciate you being generous there, very generous. Yeah, so the movie Forrest Gump hadn't come out yet when I graduated from college. In retrospect, my non-career is sort of a Forrest Gump-like trip where things just kept happening. But at the time, actually, while at Wabash, I had a summer job that was just boring me to tears, and I had an older sister who was friends with a woman who we now know as Deborah Daniels. And Debbie heard me whining about being bored, and she said, why don't you go see my brother, he might give you something. So this was the 74 Mayor Luer campaign for the Senate. And I quit my summer job, worked for free, basically for Mitch, and really got the bug. I think for me, I never wanted to run for office. I thought of campaigns more as entrepreneurial than as an enterprise unto itself that I wanted to be part of for obvious purposes. But campaigns are entrepreneurial. You start, in those days we used to say you start without a post office box, now it's a URL. In most cases we start with $0. It's not always the case these days. And yet on some date certain, you're going to know how you did. It's a W or an L. And so to me, that became a really exciting, motivating, and I guess in retrospect, entrepreneurial pursuit. You have to work your tail off. I don't know any entrepreneurs who think they're clipping coupons, right? There's never enough time in the day, usually 7 days a week. have to get a lot of people, you got resources that have to be pulled together. You have to get a lot of people on the same page. In that case, it's voters, not so much customers. And it's just, and you're not following it. You have a playbook that you write, a campaign plan, but you're not following it. You just got to pivot all the time based on what happens, what your opponent does to like. So I didn't think of it that way. I just loved it. I loved the excitement of it, and I loved the intensity of it, and the friends that we made in the process. And so, yeah, I ended up doing a number of campaigns for several years, and I guess I could have thought of it as entrepreneurial school, but I really, in retrospect, thought of it as leadership boot camp. Because you just sort of sink or swim, and try to learn how to do a lot of things that hopefully will help you later in life.
You know, it's interesting when you mention that, because I think leadership, when you're leading volunteers, is one thing. When you have authority to make a difference, your boot camp was leading volunteers.
Yeah, and donors that you were hoping, getting people to support the effort. And yeah, maybe there's some salesmanship in that process too, but it teaches you a lot of skills that I think have a lot of relevance later in life.
Then you had the opportunity, I guess, to lead the Pan Am Games. And if you think about the impact of the Pan Am Games, a short time frame, bring that together. So now we're following from campaigns to now you got another short time frame with another measure of how you succeeded. So talk about the Pan Am Games. There were some interesting stories.
We don't have enough time for the interesting stories from the Pan Am Games. Looking around the room, most of you weren't born when we were in this period of time. I had come back from Washington, D.C., where I was briefly, and started a direct marketing firm and sold it after 3 years. So sort of waiting for that transaction to close. The city leaders, older brothers and sisters, had been approached about going after the opportunity to have the Pan Am Games. They said, you have time on your hands, why don't you help us put the bid together? We did that, and then they hired me, which at the time was preposterous, to be the president of the organizing committee. So from January of '85 to the games in August of '87, that was my job. And again, there really wasn't a playbook. The games, for those of you who wouldn't have any idea what they are, is the Summer Olympic Games, basically, for the Western Hemisphere. So from Chile up to Canada, all the countries participate, and pretty much in the sports that are in the Summer Games. So this was a big deal for Indianapolis. We were just kind of trying to get our stride in organizing events and sports. And it ended up being terrific. We had 38,000 uniformed, accredited, hopefully trained volunteers that worked for about 3 weeks. It was 3 weekends, 17 days or something like that. We sold 1 million tickets back then, which built new venues. It was sort of D-Day for the city and state, I think. And again, people just wanted to be involved. We had excellent people, for the most part not paid, volunteering to take an assignment. I'll go run basketball or some other sport, and I'll look after the award ceremony, and on and on and on. And it was really an incredibly gratifying thing for anybody who was involved in it. But I think for the city, it taught us that we can do more than we thought we could do. I say the city, but the state. I mean, sailing was up in Lake Michigan. Equestrian events were here. So it really was much more than Indianapolis or even central Indiana, but we became proud of ourselves, I think, as a place to live, and liked the positive reflection from 24 hours of CBS coverage of the games, and survived all kinds of stories, including things like Fidel Castro announcing his boycott of the games the day we got the games. You know that story?
It's an interesting story.
So the only real competition on the field for medals was Cuba for the U.S. athletes, a little bit Canada, and a couple sports, Central American countries. And it was still the Cold War. How's that for making us feel old? So it was everything. And Castro, Havana, and Indianapolis competed to see who would get the right to host the games, and we won. And that day he said, well, you paid a $25 million bribe to steal the right to host the games for Cuba. The whole budget was $25 million. And so that was a horrible problem. And it's too long a story, but eventually Ted Bohm, the head of the U.S. Olympic Committee, myself, and Sandy Knapp were asked to come down, and the implication was that you might end up talking to Castro. And in fact, that happened. And it's too long a story, but over the course, he probably spoke for the first, it started about 12:30 in the morning with no notice, and he probably spoke for the first 2 hours without hardly taking a breath. The good news was his interpreter might have been the most beautiful woman I've ever met. So I just had to look at her, and he could say anything he wanted to say. Anyway, he eventually says, we can't do it because I've already explained to the Cuban people that you guys are unethical, you stole this from Havana. And I said something much less direct, but like, surely if you wanted to come, you could convince the Cubans. And it popped out of his seat, and I think I'm going to be shot. Leaves the room, comes back in with a hardbound volume of the report to the Politburo, which is his State of the State annually, and it's a book, and he turns to the chapter on the Pan American Games and starts reading what he said to the Cubans in his speech. And we sort of survived that, and then he starts subtly laying out 5 different conditions, which if we met, they'd come. But he wasn't nearly that direct or clear. Ultimately, people like Mitch Daniels and Dick Lugar and Dan Quayle, we were kind of loaded in D.C., and many of these conditions had to be met by the U.S. government's tolerance. And everything got agreed to except he wanted to come and take the flag back to Havana as the Mexico city. And they didn't want to do that. But everything else fell into place, and they came, and there's a lot of Cuban stories. The Cubans in exile in Miami were sort of offended by anything coming north from Havana. So they opened up storefront offices in downtown Indianapolis to protest. They flew helicopters over the baseball game where Cuba was playing, I think it was the U.S., but I'm not sure about that, offering $10,000 rewards for every Cuban athlete that could be fat. And on and on and on. It was Brett Musburger on CBS. We had a long conversation about all that. We got through it. It was amazingly successful, and I really think that for the city and the state, it kind of put us on the sports map, and more importantly, it gave people the confidence that whether it's infant mortality or education reform or you name it, we can do more than we imagined doing if we just set our minds to it.
Now you've had 2 major events. What are you on?
Well, a few things, I suppose. One is that something like that. So Allison Melanchthon, I'll fast forward to Super Bowl for 1 minute, Steve. Allison Melanchthon is the best person and the best event organizer, as far as I'm concerned, on the planet. And she'd come in to talk about the Super Bowl, and she'd say, so here are the 200 goals. Yeah, right, good. Well, let's do all 200. We can't talk about 200 goals. So we ended up with 4 things that we could talk about that were the reasons we're doing this and sort of the barometers of success. Things like, exceed expectations, diverse, inclusive, and a couple more. So one thing that I think I learned along the way is that at least at some level of leadership, you've got to be able to communicate clearly, which often means everything, but it often means to simplify things so that whoever you're talking to kind of gets it, and gets how it fits in the overall enterprise mission. Another thing, back to our friend Mitch Daniels, that I learned, you can't do things like that without having days where, you think somebody's going to just take you out in the tar and offend you. It's a bad day. You're going to get eaten up in the media or whatever. So one time I called Mitch and said, so when you have days like that, you really think this is bad, do you say to yourself? And he said, I said to myself, they can't eat me. That works for me, you know. I'll get through this. There'll probably be life on the other end of it. So that's just a silly way to say you learn perseverance and persistence and thick skin, and you know, to try to do what you think is the right thing and not look back.
After this, you sort of move into the motorsports. Endless association. Why don't you take us through those adventures? Some of them are really interesting in dealing with the top athletes and egos and all sorts of challenges.
Yeah, so I'm in the Wabash College Tennis Hall of Fame, and I'm quick to say it has nothing to do with my backhand or my serve. It was that I got plucked out of Indianapolis in 1990 to run the then brand new governing body for professional tennis, men's tennis around the world, the ATP Tour. So my wife and I and 2 young kids moved to Palm Beach, Florida, and started on this journey. And I mean, I did know a fair amount about tennis and its history, and unlike cars, where I can't find the engine in a car, I knew rackets and strings and balls and all the rest of it. So 85% of the revenue in men's professional tennis comes from outside the U.S. We had normally at the tour level about 75 tournaments a year in 35 countries. For 15 years, with an exception, I spent more than half my time outside the U.S. So we developed it very broadly. We put tournaments in the Middle East, throughout South America, in China, Asia, Australia, New Zealand. So I did get an education about the globe. It's a very tough sport to organize. When I started working in INDYCAR racing, friends would say, you don't want to do that, you can never get the owners on the same page. It's child's play compared to tennis. Not to say that it's done and over, but yeah, no, you have very different, everybody's whole state's identity and so important economically. And I thought maybe this would be the perfect confluence of civic and for-profit. And it's a business, to be sure, but it's, again, something that we want everybody to feel part of and to have that beneficial kind of civic engagement. So, yeah, despite the considerable questions about whether it made any sense, took it on that basis. And I'd spent a year before I started on the board as the director liaising with Boston Consulting Group, which the board had retained to try to help create a growth strategy. So I had some thoughts about that. And it's been 11 years.
You know, when you enter into something new like that, is there dash of cold water or the issue?
Oh, yeah.
What was that first reaction as you thought, oh my?
Well, I knew, you know, what the financials looked like, and I had met many of the stakeholders. But the first thing I did, even before I actually took the office, was spend a whole week, so probably 80 hours, and I told the then administration, senior people, I'd like a list of the top 100 people in the company. Couldn't really produce a list of the top 100. It was a chore. And I spent at least an hour with each of them individually. And I, you know, it was trying to get to know them as people and what motivated them and how they felt in their work and all that. And the cold water was, amazingly, people wanted to be there. They were so motivated, you know, by being part of this place and what it means to their neighbors. But it was a mess. I mean, people didn't know who they reported to. They didn't know how decisions got made. Decisions would get made, and then they'd find out they got remade. And it just wasn't put together very well. It had not occurred to me that the INDYCAR part of the company had been fully built out. Legal, financial, marketing, sales, you name it. And the IMS part of the company had been fully built out with all the same functions. And they didn't even get along, much less help each other. So, you know, there was a lot of clarity about opportunities to improve the way the place functioned, and we thought to grow. So the then state of affairs in terms of the people and the approach to the organization is probably really what's cold water, but that's invigorating, right? When you get splashed in the face, and it gives you clarity on what needs to be done.
Now you've got a new owner.
Yeah, do I?
Obviously, rates in motorsports. How did things change? How's that change your vision and ability to accomplish making that?
Yeah, so Roger Penske, I suspect, like Bill Cook, is a force of nature. Unbelievable. We could talk, we could do a series of these sorts of discussions. But I'm reminded, sitting at the table, about two commonalities. When I read the first book about Bill, Ready, Fire, Aim, I'll come back to, somewhere in there it talks about how he didn't believe in budgets. He never had a budget. How the hell can you run an organization without a budget? I just thought, can't even imagine what that means. Guess who else doesn't have budgets? We sort of have a plan, right? That he and I may top down in about 3 hours, and then you figure out what to do after that. But so that there are two incredible successful business leaders who had the same exact point of view about that, as far as I can tell. And then Ready, Fire, Aim, Roger, everything is intense and immediate, and execution. So some of us would think about something a little longer than he might before we pull the trigger. But it's that same, I suspect, sort of passion for movement, a bias toward action. And so I've learned a lot from him, as I know everybody around Bill would have with him. Roger is 87. He is tireless. You can't really keep up with him. I think in the introduction it was noted he has over 70,000 employees, $40 billion in turnover between the companies. Our little company probably got a car dealership that makes more money than we do. I get more than that much of his mind share, I promise you. He's so passionate about INDYCAR and Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so detail-oriented, so on it all the time. Biggest difference besides all those great practices is capital. We just didn't have it. So, for the place, for the legacy of the Holman George family, that sale to him, I think is going to bear out to him perfect. For me, it's just another part of the Forrest Gump life education.
Now you're going to bring 300,000 people.
I think we're going to get the hook, but go ahead.
Okay, but you're going to bring a large number. And so, tell us a little about the plan of that overall, and how many people all but have that happen all in one day.
Probably 260 full-time people are working on it, and then another 10,000 people are working on it back there. And it's every imaginable from federal to local law enforcement agency. They've been doing it forever. They've been working and planning for all the time. I don't think it ever stops. We have a fabulous staff. They're very proud. They want to be proud of it. I think we have only good people and only friendly people. So we hope we can provide a really great experience for all the fans out there. Planning I just read yesterday, mine it's about that thick. It's the emergency action plans that we generated internally, both from an INDYCAR on the track perspective and from the rest of it. And I mean, tomorrow, you say, who has time to write this? Our people are doing that, and that's just one little thing. It is no mean feat to create a city with probably north of 325,000 people this year. Getting in there in the morning I think that's pretty close to the populations of South Bend and Fort Wayne combined. They're going to materialize. You want them in there and safely to not miss anything that's going to happen pre-race and the show and all that. And it works pretty well. Then we got to get them home, and that's harder. They don't want to leave at the same moment.
They're all laughing.
Well, we hope so. Well, it's something we're very proud to be part of, and amazing amount of work by some really talented people.
As part of your organization, you work with small startups and industry. Do you have special programs for that?
Not so much. We have helped a tech sports incubator in Indianapolis, sort of incubate some startups in the sports space where technology was relevant for us. But I really think about the whole ecosystem of racing that was entrepreneurial. The race team is really a big business, and they got to eat what they kill, and they've got all those entrepreneurial challenges. So a lot of our whole ecosystem is small business people that just want to get things done. So there's not really a program. And then we work with a number of academic organizations that have motorsports programs, and that's very helpful.
So, gentlemen, I just want to say thanks. Oh, Steve, you got one more question, or do you want to?
How many companies we work with? I don't know. We just put out a, we didn't do it, but an independent economic impact study that some of you would have read that said the annual Indiana economic impact is $1 billion. We don't have to bid to get it every year. So I don't know how many companies that is altogether, but it is perfect for NACID, and it's not just us, but like there are tracks all over the state. It's a real cluster, I think, for Indiana. Thank you.
Well, thank you, John. I think we have time for maybe one, maybe two questions. So if anybody has a question, down here, down front, here we go.
Can we get F1 back to Indy?
We got time for two. I think the answer in the near term is no. First of all, if we're going to do it, it's going to be great. And it's really hard to figure out on the calendar where that's possible. It used to be a big economic problem because they wanted this outrageous sanction fee to do it. They're not doing business quite that way now, so it's not that. It's just that between May, which is everything up to May through the race to promote, and then immediately go into promote the next week, with the sales and the like. And then the Brickyard, the NASCAR weekend. How to fit it in and not be on a Colts weekend when the college football season is really tough. Especially because they would want to do it when they're on a swing anyway, going to in North America somewhere. So the short answer is probably not.
Last one here.
Great conversation. Thank you so much. I'm interested, you talked a lot about your past, fantastic, and I'm interested in what you see in the future, especially with regard to that conversation you had with your wife back from Florida around impacting people's lives.
Well, now we have 6 granddaughters and a grandson, so that's got to be part of the conversation for sure, whatever we do going forward. We also have kind of a meaningful family connection to Kenya these days. And we don't have a plan. I never had a plan. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think we both could see spending a fair amount of time out there in a very different kind of setting, a different orientation. We'll see.
Gentlemen, this one on? Yep. Gentlemen, thanks again. Another round of applause. As we think about the entrepreneurship program that we have here in the entrepreneurial mindset, your league rules, that you were like, hey, here's how you start a league, you need a schedule, you need some rules, you got to find sponsors, and then you got to find a TV deal. As you think about like building a business, that's essentially the same thing you got to do, right? You got to figure out what's your plan, you got to find some customers, and you got to sell stuff to them. So I really appreciate your experience and sharing that with us. So thank you so much. One of the other things that Mark talked about was that Mayor Ballard story. And he just called him out of the blue and he said, I picture you as the face of the Super Bowl.
It's still
And now I look out upon this group and I picture you as the donors to INDYCAR. So on your tables are these flyers, and I would encourage you to take one home. Or leave it, fill it out now, actually. You know what, fill it out now, and we'll come around later and collect them. But you know, your support does make a huge difference to INDYCAR, to our students in their lives. And you know, one of the key takeaways I took from Mark's story was he wasn't looking, he wouldn't have said yes if somebody didn't ask. So I'm asking you. So help us be better, help us make our community better, help our students be better, and help their futures be brighter. So you can make that difference today, or on on April 23rd, which is IDTech Day. So be looking for us to push out more about that on April 23rd. I will be here cooking burgers and dogs. If you want to swing by, I'd be happy to serve you a burger and dog, and we can talk about, meet some students, talk about some of the great programs that are going on here. So thank you very much. Really appreciate everything you all do to support us and our students. And finishing right on time, Mark, Steve, again, Steve, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to really put Mark through the ringer. We appreciate it so much. The conversation was fantastic. A lot of great takeaways, so thank you very much. And Mark, again, thank you so much for your time. I know this is a huge, busy season, getting ready to start, and just to take time and come down here, we really appreciate it, and really do look forward to the race this year. So, thank you.